to LA in 2012
Yeah.
permanently because I fell in love with it. I fell out of love with New York. So that's where I live now in West Hollywood.
So that's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, I presume you're a New Yorker. I read something that you were born in New Jersey, but I presume, people would still count you as a New Yorker.
Because I'm literally so close to the city, and then my father worked in the city.
Yeah.
And I have an apartment still there, and I'm very attached to the city, even though the city has changed. Like, this city is much cooler now.
No, I don't agree with that. Yeah, but thing is, I want to know, how close these connections, of your, background and your upbringing to, your filmmaking, or at least, the subject matters that you're interested in.
I was blessed to have, both parents who were very supportive of the arts, even though they were not in the arts. My mother was a school teacher, and my father is a patent trademark attorney. My father likes to be called a intellectual property attorney or something like that now. But anyway, I grew up hearing about patents and copyrights and trademarks. I have to say that it was an upper middle class upbringing. I was able to go to a private school because the local schools weren't actually very good when I moved out to New Jersey. So I was very blessed in that way.
Well, I watched a Criterion video of you picking up the DVDs, and you said your dad's favorite is My Married Rich, which I also really liked. And I can tell, he must have shown you a lot of he has a sense of humor.
He has a sense of humor, but he doesn't really have a big film knowledge. I think that was something that just his father turned him on to or something, and then I think that my film knowledge. Well, first off, my fascination to film came from my mother because she was the one who introduced me to the Universal monster films, and Frankenstein was the thing that made me want to make films. And then we were just living in a time when, there were video stores and I could rent, I could explore on my own. It was a self-education thing. They were very supportive of it, but it was a self-education. Overall, I think that they were parents who were very did their best, especially from their generation, I think they battled against the sort of what they saw growing up. They grew up during the civil rights movement. They grew up during the women's equality movement, and
so they're really liberal.
So I think that they were very liberal, and they've become more liberal. Well, they've always been liberal, yes, because I think that they saw so much of, they were in a time when things were changing, and they were, I think, on the right side of history.
Okay.
So they were very. I think they pushed that on us. About being trying to be more accepting of others, to understand others, try to walk in other people's footsteps for a little while. I think they were without the word empathy is this word that has just been in the last year or two. Has been overused almost. Like everybody is saying empathy. Like even Jordan Peele says, "Get Out" is about empathy. There's a lot. Everybody's using it, but I think it's something that was always. Looking back on my upbringing, I think my parents were always, without saying or using that word, they were always very much pushing to have my sister and I. Have empathy for others.
I can feel it in your film, that sense of empathy and also generosity, especially towards the ending. I mean, throughout your films, that all these endings really, I if I can, think of related to a word, I would say generosity. Let's say in Take Out, I wouldn't expect that he would, get the money from his friend after this very tragic moment,
right?
And same as Prince of Broadway, that he finally accepting this princess's son. Also Starlet, that I mean it's very in Starlet it's starting getting more subtle, but still it's a moment of a of a woman realizing that the loss of someone is also a rite of passage for her.
Yeah.
And during, of course, like that reconciliation of a friendship. And also at the end of for the project, I mean, it's less as I think it's more it's an ambiguous one, as you talked about. It's more like a it's more like a fantasy.
Yes.
For us to imagine, but still there is an happy ending. There's an open-endedness in it. As we were talking about empathy and to feel for others. So I wonder, like, what do you want us, as an audience to feel at the end?
Well, I think the ending, for me, as just a storyteller and somebody who's trying to tell stories in this running length of 90 minutes to 2 hours, what you leave the audience with in that last 5 minutes, or even in that last 30 seconds, is the thing that is going to be with them as they leave the theater and they start perhaps talking with their whoever they went with. If you have any point, or if you have any message I feel, and it might be too on the nose sometimes, but I feel like hitting the audience with that in the last minute last couple of minutes is a way of really driving it home. I appreciate sometimes films that have, that peter out a little bit, or perhaps, have an open-ended ending. But I think that I have, now looking back on all of my films, I've always had the ending in mind from very early on in the writing, because I know that that's the most impactful, for me, it's the most impactful part of the film. The last, sometimes even the last shot is more important than any other shot in the film. And so it's your final statement. It's the last time someone's going to hear from you for another 3 years.
So I wondered. So the the vision of the ending. Do you have it at the beginning when you're thinking of the film, or when you're in the middle of writing the script? So how did you proceed?
It's very early on. So if it was like with Takeout, we didn't know what our story was going to be yet. But as soon as we did figure out that it was going to be a moment in which his friend, who we thought was actually not his nemesis, but somebody who is definitely not the one that was least expected to help him, suddenly helps him. And then we just thought of that last image. It was very important to bring him into Times Square, because Times Square is a representation of everything that's American and commercial and capitalist, and you know what I mean. It's materialism to the 10th degree. So to leave this guy who's still an invisible dude, but right in the middle of the most visible place, which is Times Square, that was an image that we had very early on. So we knew we were going to end it with him, with this single shot of him, just with the lights blurring behind him. That was that. Prince of Broadway is a different one. That, if anything, we knew we were going to play with what was real and what's not, and perhaps the ending was going to be even playing with the audience, saying that maybe, we know that the child is not his, or he wouldn't have pocketed the thing. So, but is it okay? Is it okay? Obviously it's not okay to have hustled somebody else, but we certainly are okay when we buy our fake Pradas and fake Coaches and fake sneakers, and we accept those things as real. So I wanted to play with that whole concept, and I didn't know what our final image was going to be, but I did know that I wanted to have the audience question whether or not it was okay with accepting something that might not be the real thing, and accept it as the real thing. And it would happen to be that I shot that last shot of them coming down over the hill as B-roll, but it was something that I found as this is going to be my last shot.
Okay.
Because we were very happy with the way it looked, because of the way it was serendipity. I don't know if you remember the last shot of Prince of Broadway. They're coming down over the hill. You have Prince and his girlfriend, they're holding the baby and they're walking down the hill. But then all of a sudden this family just comes running around the corner, and all these little kids come running around the corner. That was like, I didn't plan that.
Okay.
So it was one of those moments where like real life gave me a happy accident, and I said, how can I deny this great shot?
And you only found out on the editing table?
No, we kind of, going into editing, we knew it was there, because when we were watching it on the day of, we were like, can you believe this could be our last shot, you know? So and then of course Starlet was very much in the beginning. I knew always going into this screenplay that we were going to reveal that she had a daughter. That was something that was very clear. And then Tangerine happened while we were actually very kind of early on in our research with Maya and Kiki. Their friendship was so strong, and I thought that what would be the ultimate sacrifice in their world, to take your wig off and to give it to the other girl, would be such a sacrifice, because they removing a wig for a trans woman, especially a vulnerable, trans woman who has to basically, who's halfway living on the streets, to do that makes her so vulnerable. It's her identity in a way. It works obviously into, she's battling with the way that society views her gender,
and also her waist, because once she takes off her wig, that it's not the kind of hair that you expect from a let's say another kind of woman. So I think it's a very powerful gesture.
Yes,
they both take off their hair.
So that was very much discovered before we went into production. We obviously wrote that in the screenplay, and I knew that was going to be the last image of the movie. And then with the new film, we knew from the very beginning that they were going to run to Disney. We just didn't know that it was what the actual shot was going to look like until we shot it. But at first we were thinking they were going to be on a ride going up into like Mooney to the stars. We were always talking about stars and the moon and astrology, and we made hints at that. So we thought she might be on a rocket ride. We didn't know exactly, but we knew that it was going to be some sort of escape to the park. So I think the films that stick with me, if you ask me what my favorite films are, and I look back at the films that have had the biggest impact on me, all of the endings are so strong. Look at Harold and Maude, the car goes off down, and you think he's dead, and then he's up there with the banjo. That's like an ultimate ending to me. Just you can name any classic movie. It has very strong endings, and I think that's just that's the one thing that I really moving forward with every film, I don't want to go into production without knowing what my ending is.